The research station floated quietly in the darkness of space, far from any major trade routes or inhabited worlds. Inside the cramped observation room, Dr. Arya Chen sat hunched over her computer screen, her eyes tired from hours of work. She had been listening to dead signals all day, cataloging old transmissions that no longer meant anything to anyone. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The coffee in her cup had gone cold hours ago. Arya rubbed her eyes and was about to call it a night when something unusual appeared on her screen. A signal, weak and broken, flickered across her monitors. She sat up straighter, her exhaustion forgotten. The pattern was strange, unlike anything she had seen before. It repeated every few seconds, as if someone far away was calling out into the void. Arya adjusted her equipment and filtered out the background noise. As the signal became clearer, her heart began to beat faster. She recognized fragments of Old Terran, a human language that had not been spoken in over 300 years. But that was impossible. Humanity had disappeared from the galaxy centuries ago, vanishing after a terrible war that nearly destroyed them. She played the signal again, listening carefully. Mixed in with the ancient words were mathematical sequences, prime numbers arranged in a specific pattern. This was not random interference. This was a message, carefully crafted by someone who knew what they were doing. Someone was using humanity's old codes to call for help. Arya immediately called her supervisor, Dr. Marcos, who arrived looking annoyed at being woken up. He listened to the signal for barely a minute before shaking his head. "It is just interference," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Old satellites, broken equipment. Space is full of garbage transmissions." But Arya could not let it go. She had spent years studying human languages and history. She knew what she was hearing. "Sir, these mathematical patterns are not natural," she insisted. "Someone created this message. Someone is out there." Dr. Marcos gave her a tired look. "The humans are gone, Chen. They have been gone for 3 centuries. Everyone knows the story. After the war with the Vel'Karas, they disappeared. Dead, probably. Let it go and get some sleep." After he left, Arya sat alone in the dark room, the signal still playing softly through her speakers. She could not explain why, but she felt certain this was important. Someone, somewhere, was calling out, and she was the only one listening, far across the galaxy. On a small agricultural colony called New Harvest, Marcus Webb was working in his fields when the sun began to set. He was a farmer, like his father and grandfather before him. But unlike most farmers, Marcus had a secret. In the basement of his old farmhouse, hidden behind a false wall, was an archive his grandfather had left him. Marcus had discovered the archive when he was 16. After his grandfather died, the old man had made him promise to guard it, though he never explained what it was for. The archive contained old star charts, military codes, and a set of coordinates that pointed to somewhere beyond known space. At the top of the main screen, written in faded letters, were the words, "The Dark Fleet." For years, Marcus had wondered what it meant. He had searched historical records but found nothing. The archive had remained silent and dark, just a collection of old data that no longer seemed to matter. He had almost convinced himself it was just his grandfather's hobby, nothing more. But that night, as Marcus entered his house covered in dirt from the fields, he heard something unusual. A humming sound was coming from the basement. He dropped his tools and ran down the stairs, his heart pounding. The archive was active for the first time in his life. The screens glowed with blue light. Data was streaming across them faster than he could read. Marcus stood in front of the main display, watching in amazement. Then, suddenly, all the data stopped. The screens went black except for one message that appeared in the center, written in blazing red letters. "Received." His hands were shaking as he touched the screen. A new message appeared. "Activation sequence initiated. Stand by for further instructions."
Ow.
Marcus stumbled backward, nearly falling over a box. Whatever this archive was, whatever his grandfather had been guarding, it was waking up after centuries of silence. He spent the rest of the night in the basement, watching the screens and waiting for more information. As dawn approached, he finally understood what his family had been protecting all these years. They had been guardians of a secret, keepers of coordinates that led to something the galaxy had forgotten. They had been waiting for a signal, and now that signal had arrived. Meanwhile, aboard the research station, Arya had not slept. She had spent the entire night analyzing the transmission, breaking it down piece by piece. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The message was not just a call for help, it was a warning. Buried in the mathematical sequences were coordinates and a simple phrase repeated over and over: "They are coming." As the station's day shift began to arrive, Arya printed out her findings and prepared to present them to the director. She knew they would not believe her at first. Humanity had been gone for so long that most species considered them a myth, a scary story told to children. The humans had been called Deathworlders because they came from a planet so dangerous it should not have produced intelligent life. They were warriors and survivors, and the galaxy had feared them. But fear had turned to relief when they disappeared. The other species, the Aether, with their elegant ships, the crystalline lumens, the aquatic dresh. They had all been happy to see the humans go. They preferred their peaceful galaxy, where wars were rare and violence was controlled. They did not want to remember what real predators looked like. Arya gathered her evidence and walked toward the director's office. She did not know if anyone would listen to her. She did not know if the message was even real or if she was chasing shadows in the dark. But she knew one thing for certain. Something was out there in the blackness of space, and it was calling out using humanity's voice. After 300 years of silence, echoes of Earth's children were finally being heard again. The station continued its slow orbit around the distant star, unaware that everything was about to change. In the depths of space, beyond the mapped regions of the galaxy, something ancient was stirring. And somewhere in the darkness, a fleet that had been sleeping for centuries was beginning to wake. The Galactic Council Chamber was a beautiful place. Built from crystal that reflected light in 1,000 different colors, representatives from 15 different species sat in a great circle. Their seats arranged so that no one was above anyone else. For over 500 years, this council had maintained peace across the inhabited galaxy. But today, that peace was crumbling. Ambassador Tlora of the Aether people stood in the center of the chamber, her long silver robes flowing around her thin frame. Her people were known for their wisdom and their love of art and philosophy. They had never known war, not real war, until now. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the assembled council. 17 star systems have fallen in the last 4 months, she said, her voice echoing in the silent chamber. The Zenthari hive is unlike anything we have faced before. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They consume everything in their path. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. On the screens around the chamber, images played of the devastation. Whole planets reduced to empty husks, their populations gone, their resources drained. The Zenthar were not conquerors. They were parasites, moving from world to world like locusts, leaving nothing behind but death. Council member Dreschner, whose aquatic species came from the water world of Tethys, raised a tentacle to speak. We have tried every defensive strategy. We have evacuated 3 million people from the outer colonies. But they keep coming. Our military was never designed for this kind of enemy. We do not know how to fight something that wants to destroy rather than dominate. There was frightened murmuring throughout the chamber. The council species had all evolved on gentle worlds. The Aether came from a planet with light gravity and abundant resources. The lumens had grown in crystal caves, where they absorbed energy directly from mineral formations. The Dresh had evolved in warm, safe oceans with few predators. None of them understood what it meant to fight for survival against a species that only wanted death. Tlora waited for the noise to quiet down before she spoke again. What she was about to propose would shock them all, she knew. But there was no other choice. There is one option we have not considered, she said slowly. We could look for the humans. The chamber erupted in protest. Several council members stood up, shouting. The Lumen representative, whose crystalline body glowed with agitation, rang like a bell. The humans are gone. They have been gone for 300 years. In good riddance, muttered one of the representatives from a world that had lost ships in the human Velcross. War. Tlora raised her hand for silence. I know what you all think of them. I know the stories. The Deathworlders, we called them. We feared them because they came from a world that tried to kill them every day. They understood violence because they had to fight just to survive. But that is exactly why we need them now. An older council member, his species having served on the council for generations, spoke up. Even if we wanted to find them, we do not know where they went. After the war with the Velcross ended, their fleet simply disappeared into the void. Most believe they went to the Perseus arm beyond the galactic barrier, but no one has explored that region in centuries. Laura nodded. I have been studying the old records. The last human transmission came from coordinates in the Perseus arm. They said they were leaving, that the galaxy was better off without them. But what if they are still out there? What if they could help us? And why would they? Asked Dreschner. We did nothing to stop their war with the Velcross. We let them fight alone. When they asked for help, we turned them away. Why would they save us now? Plora had no answer to that. It was true. The Council had failed humanity when they needed help most. But she had to try. Because maybe they are better than we are, she said quietly. Maybe they will help us even though we do not deserve it. After hours of debate, the Council voted. It was close, but the decision was made. They would send an expedition to the Perseus arm to search for any sign of humanity, and they would broadcast a message on all the old human frequencies, hoping that someone, somewhere, was listening. The message was crafted carefully by linguists who specialized in Old Terran. They wrote it simply and honestly, knowing that lies would not work with humans. The message said, "Children of Earth, the galaxy is dying. We once called you monsters. Now we beg the monsters to save us. If you can hear this, please respond. We need you." The message was broadcast from every major relay station in the galaxy, sent out into the darkness on wavelengths that had not been used in centuries. Most council members did not expect a response. They thought it was a waste of time and resources. But Plora hoped. She had read the old human literature, their stories and histories. She knew they were warriors, yes, but they were also protectors. They had always fought for those who could not fight for themselves at the research station. Arya Chen nearly fell out of her chair when the official council message came through. She had been trying to convince the director to take her findings. Seriously, when every screen in the facility lit up with the broadcast, the director stared at the message in shock, then looked at Arya with wide eyes. "You were right," he whispered. "The signal you found? It was real." But something even more shocking happened next. Arya's equipment began picking up responses. Hundreds of them. Automated signals pinging back from the Perseus arm, each one confirming receipt of the message. The responses were simple, just acknowledgement codes, but they were there. Something was out there, something vast and organized. And it had heard the Council's plea. Arya immediately began trying to trace the signals back to their source. The coordinates all pointed to the same general region. A vast area of space beyond the galactic barrier that had been marked as unexplored on all the charts, on New Harvest. Marcus Webb received a message that changed everything. His archive screens lit up with an urgent priority transmission. The message was simple but clear. Activation sequence complete. Report to coordinates 447.239, 18 in the Perseus arm. The Dark Fleet wakes. Bring all archive data. Your family's watch is ending. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. His family's watch. For generations, his ancestors had guarded this archive, waiting for a signal that might never come. His grandfather had died, never knowing if their vigil meant anything. But now Marcus understood. His family had been keepers of a secret, guardians of coordinates that led to something incredible. He did not hesitate. He packed the archive data onto portable drives and booked passage on the next transport heading toward the core worlds. From there, he would find a way to reach the Perseus arm, even if he had to hire a private ship. Whatever was waiting out there, whatever the Dark Fleet was, his family had spent centuries protecting its location. Now it was time to see what they had been guarding. Across the galaxy, pieces were moving into place. The Council prepared an expedition ship, the fastest vessel they had, with enough supplies for a long journey into unexplored space. Arya volunteered to go as the chief linguist. the only person who might be able to communicate with whatever they found. Marcus made his way toward the core worlds, carrying secrets that had been buried for 300 years and beyond the barrier. In the darkness of the Perseus arm, something ancient was stirring. Lights were coming on in the void, one by one, like stars being born. Ships that had been sleeping were waking up. Crews that had maintained silent vigil for centuries were receiving new orders. The Dark Fleet, humanity's greatest secret, was preparing to return to a galaxy that had forgotten them. The message had been received. The monsters were coming home. The journey to the Perseus arm took 3 weeks aboard the Council's fastest diplomatic vessel, the Harmony's Hope. Arya Chen spent most of the journey studying what little information existed about humanity's final days in the galaxy. She read reports from the war with the Velcross, testimonies from species who had encountered humans, and old news broadcasts from Earth's colonies. The picture they painted was of a people who were both fascinating and terrifying. Marcus Webb had joined the expedition at the last moment. Arriving at the departure station with his archive data and a simple explanation, his family had been waiting for this moment for 300 years. The council representatives had been skeptical, but Arya had convinced them to bring him along. If they were going to find humans, they needed every piece of information they could get. Ambassador Tlora led the delegation, along with representatives from the Dresh and Lumen species. The ship's captain was a nervous Aether named Kelvin, who had never traveled beyond the mapped regions of space. As they approached the coordinates from the automated responses, his anxiety grew. The Perseus arm was dark, filled with debris fields and dead stars. It was not a place where civilizations thrived. "I am reading something ahead," called out the sensor operator, her voice tight with tension. "It is big. Very big." On the main screen, an image slowly appeared that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. What they were seeing should not exist. It was a debris field that stretched for thousands of kilometers, but it was not random. It was organized, structured. Old colony ships, destroyed vessels, and ancient satellites had been carefully arranged into a massive defensive network. At the center of it all floated a single enormous ship, its hull covered in scars and makeshift repairs that spoke of centuries of survival. "That is the Remembrance," Marcus said quietly, recognizing the ship from images in his archive. It was Earth's last Ark ship, designed to carry 1 million people to new worlds. They said it was lost in the war. But the Remembrance was not lost. It was here, and it was very much alive. As their ship approached, dozens of smaller vessels emerged from the debris field, moving with military precision to surround them. These were warships, Arya realized, though unlike any she had ever seen. They were built from asteroids and scrap metal, bristling with weapons that looked ancient but well-maintained. A transmission came through, and Arya's hands shook as she activated the translator. The voice that spoke was human, female, and absolutely calm. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. State your purpose or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." Flora stepped forward to respond, but Arya interrupted her. "Let me," she said. She had spent years learning Old Terran, and she knew how important first contact protocols were to humans. She spoke slowly and clearly. "This is Dr. Arya Chen of the research station Kepler-7 aboard the Council vessel Harmony's Hope. We received your signal. We are here in response to your message. We mean no harm." There was a long silence. Then the human voice spoke again, and Arya could hear surprise in it. "You speak Old Terran?" "Very well, Dr. Chen. You and your companions will be escorted to the Remembrance. Any hostile action will be met with immediate destruction. Do you understand?" "We understand," Arya replied. The warships guided them toward the massive Ark ship. As they got closer, Arya could see just how damaged the Remembrance was. Its hull was covered in burn marks and impact scars. Entire sections had been rebuilt with whatever materials were available. This was a ship that had been in battle, many battles, and had survived through pure determination. They docked in a cavernous bay that had once been designed for civilian transports, but now housed military craft. As they exited their ship, they were met by soldiers in armor that looked functional but worn. The armor was marked with symbols and writing in dozens of languages, the names of ships and lost comrades. The soldiers led them through corridors that were clean but clearly old. Everything had been maintained and repaired countless times. They passed by windows that showed other sections of the Ark ship, and Arya saw gardens where food was grown, schools where children learned, workshops where equipment was built. This was not just a military base. This was a home, a community that had existed in isolation for centuries. Finally, they were brought to a command center where a woman waited for them. She was perhaps 50 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She wore a simple uniform with stars on the shoulders. "I am Admiral Sarah Volkov," she said. "Welcome to the Remembrance. You have come a very long way." Plora stepped forward and bowed in the Aether way. "Admiral, I am Ambassador Tlora of the Galactic Council. We received a message and we came seeking help. The galaxy is under attack by the Zenthari Hive. We are losing. We thought perhaps humanity might be able to help us." Admiral Volkov studied them for a long moment. Then she gestured to a large table in the center of the room. "Sit there is much you need to understand." As they sat, she activated a holographic display that showed the region of space they were in. 300 years ago, humanity fought a war with the Velcross Dominion. It nearly destroyed both our species, but during that war, our scientists discovered something that terrified them. The display shifted, showing the galactic barrier and the empty space beyond. Beyond this barrier, we detected signals. At first, we thought they were natural phenomena, but we were wrong. They were approach vectors. An invasion force was coming from dark space. The Zenthari Hive. Arya felt her blood run cold. "You knew? You knew they were coming 300 years ago?" Volkov nodded. "We knew. And we knew that the galaxy was not prepared to face them. Your species, the council races, you all evolved on paradise worlds. You have never known true predation. You have never had to fight for survival every single day of your existence. But humans have. Earth made us into survivors, into warriors, whether we wanted it or not." She zoomed the display in on the debris field around them. "So we made a choice. We told the galaxy we were leaving, that we were going away to find peace. But that was a lie. We came here and built this." She gestured around them. "The Dark Fleet. 300 dreadnoughts. Each one built from asteroids and designed for one purpose: to stop the Zenthari before they reached the inhabited galaxy." Marcus leaned forward, his voice full of emotion. "My grandfather, my great-grandparents, they were part of this." Volkov pulled up a database and searched. Then she smiled sadly. "Yes, the Webb family volunteered for the Archive Keeper program. They stayed behind in the galaxy, guarding the coordinates to the Dark Fleet in case we ever needed reinforcements or supplies. Your family has been keeping watch just as we have." Plora's face showed confusion and growing understanding. "You have been protecting us? All this time, you have been fighting the Zenthari alone." "Not fighting," exactly, Volkov said. "Containing. We have been intercepting their scout forces, destroying their advanced ships before they could detect your civilization. We have been the wall between you and them. But for months ago, they found another route through the barrier, one we could not block. They have entered the inhabited galaxy from a different direction." The room was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not fled. They had not disappeared. They had been standing guard in the darkness, fighting a secret war to protect a galaxy that had feared and rejected them. "Why?" Plora asked softly. "Why would you do this for us, after how we treated you?" Admiral Volkov looked at each of them in turn. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because we are human, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if they hate us for it." She stood up and walked to a window that showed the debris field and the distant stars. "But now we face a choice. The Zenthari have broken through from another direction, and we cannot maintain our position here while they attack the inhabited galaxy. We must abandon our posts and come to your aid." She turned back to them, and Arya saw both determination and sadness in her eyes. "We are the Dark Fleet, the last remnant of Earth's military power. We have spent 3 centuries becoming very good at one thing: killing Zenthari. If you want our help, you will have it. but you need to understand what you are asking for. We are not the humans you remember. We have changed. We have become what we needed to be to survive out here." Flora stood and bowed deeply. "Whatever you have become, Admiral, we need you. Please, help us save the galaxy." Admiral Volkov smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator, preparing for a hunt. "Very well, Ambassador. The Dark Fleet will answer your call. But know this, we do not fight your kind of war. We do not do precision strikes or limited engagements. When we fight to win, no matter the cost. Are you prepared for that?" Flora nodded, though Arya saw fear in her eyes. "We are." "Then let us begin," Volkov said. She pressed a control, and throughout the debris field, lights began to come on. Across the 300 dreadnoughts of the Dark Fleet, centuries-old engines roared to life. Humanity was going home. They were bringing their war with them. The return of the Dark Fleet caused panic across the inhabited galaxy. News networks broadcast images of the approaching human armada, and those images were the stuff of nightmares for species that valued beauty and elegance. The human dreadnoughts were nothing like the smooth, streamlined vessels of the Council races. They were angular and brutal, built from hollowed-out asteroids and reinforced with armor plating salvaged from 1,000 battles. Every ship bore scars, and every ship looked like it had been designed by people who understood that war was not about looking good, but about survival. The Council held emergency sessions as the Dark Fleet crossed into inhabited space. Some members wanted to turn the humans away, arguing that bringing them back was too dangerous. Others pointed out that without the humans, the Zenthari would consume everything within a year. The debate became meaningless when Admiral Volkov sent a simple message to the Council. "We are not asking permission. We are coming to fight. Stay out of our way." The diplomatic vessel Harmony's Hope traveled with the Dark Fleet, and Arya spent her time moving between the human ships and trying to explain their culture to the horrified Council representatives. What she discovered both fascinated and disturbed her. The humans of the Dark Fleet had changed in their 300 years of isolation. They were harder, colder, shaped by generations of constant vigilance. She visited the Dreadnought, Vengeance, and met families who had never seen Earth. Children who had been born on warships and knew nothing but military life. Yet they still told stories about humanity's homeworld, passing down memories like precious treasures. They sang old songs from Earth, celebrated holidays that their ancestors had celebrated, and maintained traditions that kept them connected to a world most would never see. On the Vengeance, Arya met Captain James Chen, a young officer who claimed to be a distant relative of hers. He showed her through the ship, explaining how every system worked, how every weapon was maintained. "We do not have the luxury of specialized roles like your Council species," he said. "Everyone here is a soldier, a mechanic, a farmer, whatever is needed. We survive because we must." Marcus Webb had a different experience. He was welcomed aboard the Remembrance like family, which he was in a way. Admiral Volkov personally showed him the memorial wall where his ancestors' names were carved. "Your great-great-grandfather Daniel Webb volunteered for the Archive Keeper program," she told him. "He and the others stayed behind to maintain the connection to the galaxy, to be our eyes and ears. Without them, we would have been truly alone." Marcus traced his fingers over the carved names. "They died never knowing if it mattered." "It mattered," Volkov said firmly. "When your archive activated and you came to find us, you proved that their sacrifice meant something. You are proof that they did their duty." Meanwhile, Ambassador Tora was trying to coordinate between the Dark Fleet and the Council's military forces. The cultural clash was immediate and severe. The Council's military doctrines emphasized minimal casualties, precision strikes, and giving enemies the chance to surrender. The humans had no such concerns. When Tlora attended her first strategy meeting aboard the Remembrance, she was shocked by what she heard. "Identify the Zenthari concentration points and hit them with antimatter torpedoes," said one of the human commanders. "We do not give them time to disperse or adapt. We hit hard and fast and make sure nothing survives." "But what about civilian populations near those concentration points?" Flora asked, horrified. The room went quiet. Admiral Volkov leaned forward. Ambassador, there are no civilians in Zenthari space. They consume everything. If there are council species near the hive concentrations, they are already gone. We can save the living, or we can mourn the dead. We cannot do both. It was a brutal truth that made Flora feel sick. But she knew Volkov was right. The Zenthari did not take prisoners. They did not occupy worlds. They ate them clean and moved on. Every moment spent in careful strategy was a moment more people died. The first joint engagement between the Dark Fleet and the Zenthari happened. At the Terran colony world of New Hope, the hive had surrounded the planet with their bioships, enormous living vessels that pulsed with stolen energy. The Council had evacuated what people they could, but thousands remained trapped on the surface. The Council's fleet approached with standard defensive formations, preparing to attempt a rescue operation. The humans did something completely different. 10 dreadnoughts, moving at speeds that should have torn them apart, charged directly into the hive swarm. Their weapons fired continuously, not bothering with precise targeting, just filling space with deadly fire. Arya watched from the bridge of the Harmony's Hope, unable to look away. The human ships plunged into the Zenthari formation like hammers. Bioships exploded around them. The humans did not even slow down. And then she heard something that made her skin crawl. The humans were singing. Through the open communication channels, she could hear the crews of those 10 dreadnoughts singing battle hymns. Old songs from Earth about war and courage and never surrendering. They sang as they fired their weapons. They sang as their ships took damage. They sang as they died. 3 of the 10 dreadnoughts were destroyed in that first charge. But they had broken the hive formation, and the other ships of the Dark Fleet poured through the gap. Within an hour, the Zenthari around New Hope were destroyed, and rescue ships were landing on the planet. That night, Arya attended the memorial service on the remembrance for the crews that had been lost. She expected something military and formal. Instead, she found families crying, children asking where their parents were, and Admiral Volkov reading the names of the dead in a voice that shook with emotion. The humans mourned their losses deeply, but they did not let grief stop them. The next morning, they were ready to fight again. As the weeks passed, the Dark Fleet and the Council forces learned to work together. The humans took the most dangerous assignments, the suicide runs that no one else would attempt. The Council ships provided support, supply lines, and rescue operations. It was not a perfect partnership, but it worked. Marcus became a liaison between the two groups, using his knowledge of both cultures to bridge gaps. He helped Council officers understand why humans fought the way they did. He helped humans understand that the Council species were not cowards, just different. They had never needed to become warriors because they had never faced true predators before. Arya made an important discovery while studying the Zenthari bioships. She found a pattern in their movements, a coordination signal that connected the entire hive. She brought this information to Admiral Volkov, who immediately understood its significance. If we can find their queen ship, the one broadcasting that signal, we can cut off the entire hive from coordination. They would become just mindless drones, easy to pick off. The Council agreed to launch an expedition to find the hive queen, but no one knew where she was. It took another month of careful tracking and dozens of small battles before they finally located her position. The Queen had established herself in the Gateway Nebula, a massive cloud of gas and dust at the edge of Council space. She was building something there, a permanent portal to dark space that would allow endless hive reinforcements to pour through. The battle plan was simple, but terrifying. The Dark Fleet would assault the nebula directly, drawing the hive forces into a large engagement. Meanwhile, a small strike team would penetrate to the Queen's location and destroy the portal before it could be completed. It was a plan that would cost thousands of lives. Everyone knew it. But there was no alternative. Admiral Volkov called a final meeting of all ship captains and council representatives. She looked around the room at the faces of people from a dozen different species, all united by the need to survive. "Tomorrow we fight the most important battle in galactic history," she said. "The Zenthari want to consume everything. We are going to show them that some things fight back." She raised a glass in a toast, an old human custom. to those who came before us, and to those who will come after. May our sacrifice mean something." Everyone in the room raised their glasses. "May our sacrifice mean something," they repeated. That night, as the fleet prepared for the final battle, Arya stood on the observation deck of the Harmony's Hope and watched the human dreadnoughts moving into formation. They looked like dark stars against the blackness of space, scarred and deadly and beautiful in their own way. These were the monsters the galaxy had feared. These were the Deathworlders who had been rejected and forgotten, and now they were all that stood between civilization and oblivion. Arya whispered a prayer to gods she did not really believe in. "Let them be enough," she prayed. "Let these monsters save us all." The Gateway Nebula was beautiful and terrible. It glowed with colors that should not exist in nature, pinks and purples and deep greens, all swirling together in a massive cloud of gas and dust. At its center, invisible to the naked eye, but clear on every sensor, was the Zenthari Queen's bioship. It was larger than anything anyone had ever seen, a living mountain floating in space. And around it swarmed thousands of smaller hive vessels, like insects, protecting their nest. The Dark Fleet arrived in attack formation. 300 dreadnoughts arranged in a pattern that Admiral Volkov called the Hammer. They did not slow down as they approached. They did not broadcast warnings or demands for surrender. They simply opened fire with every weapon they had. Pouring destruction into the nebula like a storm of light and fury, the Zenthari responded immediately. Their bioships launched toward the human fleet in waves, and the space between the two forces became a hell of weapons, fire, and explosions. Arya watched from the safety of a Council command ship stationed far behind the battle lines. Even from this distance, she could see the scale of the violence. Ships on both sides were dying, exploding into fragments or breaking apart under sustained fire. The Council forces held back, as planned, providing support fire but not entering the main battle. This was humanity's fight, and they had made it clear they would handle the assault themselves. Flora stood beside Arya, her face pale as she watched the destruction. "So many dying," she whispered. "Is this what war really is?" Arya nodded, unable to speak. She had read about wars in history books, but reading and seeing were very different things. The humans threw themselves into battle with a ferocity that seemed impossible. They were outnumbered, but they fought as if numbers did not matter. Every time a dreadnought was destroyed, the others filled the gap and kept fighting. Marcus Webb was aboard the Remembrance in the command center with Admiral Volkov. He had argued to join the strike team heading for the Queen, but Volkov had refused. "Your family has given enough," she had told him. "I need you here, keeping the Council informed of what is happening. Be our voice to them." Now Marcus stood at a secondary console, coordinating communications between the human fleet and the Council forces. He could hear the battle chatter on the open channels, the calm voices of captains calling out targets and damage reports. He could hear the singing too, that same eerie battle hymn that had disturbed Arya weeks ago. The humans sang as they fought, even as their ships took damage. Even as they knew they might die, the strike team consisted of 12 small ships, fast and maneuverable, carrying some of the most dangerous weapons ever created. Leading them was Captain James Chen, Arya's distant relative. Their mission was to penetrate the nebula's center while the Dark Fleet kept the Hive forces busy, reach the Queen's bioship, and destroy the portal she was building. James and his team moved through the nebula like ghosts, using the gas clouds for cover and navigating by sensor readings alone. Around them, they could see the massive battle raging, but they did not stop to join it. Their mission was too important. Everything depended on reaching the Queen before the portal was completed. They got within 5 kilometers of the Queen's bioship before they were detected. Suddenly, hundreds of smaller hive vessels broke off from the main battle and swarmed toward them. "All ships, defensive formation," James ordered. "We have to hold them off long enough to get the weapon in position." The weapon was called a quantum destabilizer, a device that would tear apart the molecular structure of anything within 10 kilometers of its detonation. It would destroy the Queen, the portal, and unfortunately, any ship within its range. It was a suicide weapon, and everyone on the strike team knew it. The small human ships fought desperately against the hive swarm. They were fast, but there were too many enemies. One by one, the strike team ships were being destroyed. James watched his sensor readouts and knew they would not all make it. He opened a channel to the other ships. "All vessels, this is Chen. I am going to take the destabilizer in alone. Break off and get clear." "Negative, Captain," came the reply from another ship. "We did not come this far to leave you." "That is an order," James said firmly. But even as he said it, he knew they would not obey. These were humans, shaped by 3 centuries of fighting together, living together, dying together. They would not abandon one of their own. Back on the Remembrance, Admiral Volkov watched the tactical display and knew what was about to happen. She had seen this play out 1,000 times in simulations and in reality. The strike team was going to make it to the target, but not all of them would survive. Maybe none of them would. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships. This is Admiral Volkov. Increase the attack intensity. Give the strike team every second we can." The Dark Fleet responded by throwing themselves even harder into the battle. Dreadnoughts that were already damaged pushed their engines beyond safe limits. Captains ordered firing rates that would burn out their weapons. They fought like demons, buying time with their lives. James and what remained of his team reached the Queen's bioship. The portal was there, a swirling vortex of energy that was growing larger by the second. Through it, James could see movement, more hive ships waiting to come through from dark space. If the portal stabilized, the invasion would never end. "Arm the destabilizer," James ordered. His weapons officer entered the codes, and the device began its activation sequence. It would take 2 minutes to reach full power. 2 minutes that James and his team had to buy. The remaining strike team ships formed a circle around James's vessel, their weapons firing continuously at the hive ships trying to stop them. They fought with everything they had, every weapon, every trick they had learned in a lifetime of combat, and they sang. Even facing certain death, the humans sang their battle hymns. Admiral Volkov made her decision. She stood up and walked to the helm of the Remembrance. "All crew, this is the Admiral. Prepare for emergency acceleration. We are going into the nebula." Marcus looked at her in shock. "Admiral, the Remembrance is the last ARC ship. If we lose it, we lose the central command of the entire fleet." Volkov met his eyes. "We lose this battle, and it does not matter what we lose. The Remembrance was built to carry humanity to new worlds. Today it will carry us to victory or to death." She turned to her crew. "All hands, battle stations. We are going to finish this." The massive ARC ship, scarred and ancient but still powerful, turned and began accelerating toward the nebula's center. As it moved, it broadcast a message to the entire Dark Fleet. "This is Admiral Sarah Volkov on the Remembrance. We are making our final run. For Earth. For the fallen. For everyone we could not save. Make this count." Every human ship in the fleet responded. "For Earth. For the fallen." James Chen saw the Remembrance coming on his sensors and understood what Volkov was doing. The ARC ship was equipped with a quantum bomb in its reactor core, a failsafe, designed to prevent the ship from being captured. If Volkov detonated it next to the portal, the explosion would be big enough to seal the gateway for thousands of years. But it would also destroy everything within 100 kilometers, including the strike team. "Admiral, negative," James transmitted. "We can complete the mission. You do not need to do this." Volkov's voice came back, calm and certain. "Captain Chen, you have done your duty. Get your people clear. I am an old woman, and I have lived 3 lifetimes out here in the dark. This is a good way to end it." On the Council command ship, Arya and Tlora watched in horror as they realized what was happening. "She is going to sacrifice herself," Tlora said. "We have to stop her." "You cannot stop her," Marcus said quietly from his position on the Remembrance. He was broadcasting to the Council ships so they could hear what was happening. "This is what we do. This is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if it costs us everything." The Remembrance plunged into the nebula center, its weapons firing at maximum capacity, clearing a path through the hive swarm. The strike team ships broke off and began retreating, fighting their way back out of the nebula. Some made it. Some did not. James Chen's ship was damaged but still flying.
Ow.
And he watched on his screens as the Remembrance positioned itself next to the portal. Admiral Volkov sat in her command chair and looked around at her crew. They had volunteered to stay with her, every one of them. They could have evacuated, but they had chosen to remain. "It has been an honor serving with you," she told them. "Remember us." She activated the quantum bomb. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Remembrance began to glow, brighter and brighter, until it was like a new star being born. The light expanded outward, consuming the Queen's bioship, consuming the portal, consuming everything. The explosion was so bright that ships had to shield their sensors to avoid being blinded. When the light faded, the center of the Gateway Nebula was empty. The portal was gone. The Queen was dead, and the Remembrance was nothing but fragments scattered across space. The Zenthari fleet, suddenly cut off from the coordination signal, became confused. The bioships began attacking each other or simply drifting aimlessly. The Dark Fleet and the Council forces systematically destroyed them over the next 6 hours. By the time the sun rose on the nearest inhabited world, the battle was over. The cost had been terrible. 72 human dreadnoughts had been destroyed. Thousands of crew members had died. Admiral Volkov and everyone aboard the Remembrance were gone. But the Zenthari invasion had been stopped. The portal was sealed. The galaxy was safe. In the days after the battle, the survivors gathered at the Gateway Nebula to mourn. Ships from every Council species came. Along with what remained of the Dark Fleet, they held a memorial service in the void, where the Remembrance had made its final stand. Marcus Webb stood with Arya Chen and Ambassador Tlora. Looking out at the assembled fleet, "My family kept watch for 300 years, he said quietly. "We waited for a signal that might never come. And when it did, we got to see what we were protecting. We got to see heroes." Tlora wiped tears from her eyes. "We called them monsters. We feared them and rejected them. And they saved us anyway." Arya thought about the last 3 months, everything she had seen and learned. They were not monsters. They were just people who understood that sometimes you have to become the thing others fear in order to protect what you love. The Council voted unanimously to establish a new organization called the Sentinel Stations, manned by both humans and Council species. They would maintain watch on the galactic barriers, ensuring that threats like the Zenthari could never surprise them again. Most of the Dark Fleet's survivors volunteered to join. Continuing the vigil their ancestors had started 300 years ago, Marcus decided to return to Earth. Carrying with him the full history of the Dark Fleet, he would make sure everyone knew about the sacrifice Admiral Volkov and her people had made. He would tell the story of humans who had given everything to protect a galaxy that had forgotten them. Arya stayed with the Council as humanity's first ambassador in 3 centuries. She worked to help her species integrate back into galactic civilization, teaching both sides how to understand each other. It was difficult work, but she believed it was important. The humans had saved the galaxy. Now, she would help make sure they had a place in it. The Council erected a monument at the Gateway Nebula called the Wall of Remembrance. It was a massive structure carved from asteroid rock, and on it were inscribed the names of every human who had died in the Dark Fleet over 300 years. At the top was a simple phrase: "They came when we called, though we gave them every reason not to." Years later, the first joint military academy opened, training humans and Council species together. They learned each other's tactics, shared each other's histories, and built a force that combined the best of both cultures. They learned that sometimes the deadliest species in the galaxy was exactly what stood between civilization and chaos. Earth's children had come home, but they brought with them wisdom earned in the dark. Peace was not the absence of monsters, but monsters choosing to protect rather than destroy. And sometimes, when everything was at stake, having monsters on your side was the only thing that mattered.